Good morning, guys. Welcome to today's lesson. We're looking at some financial mathematics, looking at types of pay. There are three major types of pay when you are working or earning money. Now, this list isn't exhaustive. I've said three main types. There are certainly other types such as piecework and royalties. Well, royalties is really commission. But there are other types of payments, but these are three major types. First of all, I'm going to look at the salary, which I've put there already, that this is based on a fixed yearly amount. All right, this is, I wouldn't say the most common way, it probably is. I mean, salaries and wages are probably your two most common types of payments that we sort of get. Commission, certainly depending on what industry you're in, will depend on that commission. But again, you could probably say that about salaries and wages as well. So salaries, so based on a fixed yearly amount. Now, you can still get paid weekly or fortnightly or monthly, all right? That still happens with a salary. It just means that you're being paid based on what you earned over the entire year. That pay will not change over those things. But certainly different jobs will be paid at different times or whatever your boss has decided. So obviously for a week, there are 52 weeks in a year. So you divide your salary, your yearly amount, by 52 weeks. I will mention at this point that in a lot of textbooks for the general maths for HSC, they will use 52.18 weeks. Some won't. The more recent ones probably don't use 2.18. I think they're starting to move away from that number, but they will often accept either of those two values, but only for salary, not for anything else. It's only when you see that word salary. But generally, if you stick with 52, I think these days that's pretty much accepted mostly. Fortnightly, of course, there are 26 fortnights in a year. So you simply divide your annual amount or your yearly amount by 26 fortnights. And then the monthly, of course, you would then divide that by I put there 12 weeks, and it should be 12 months. That's a bit of silly me. 12 months. Okay. There are other calculations, like sometimes they might give you a weekly amount and ask you to find it into a monthly amount, all sorts of things which we'll address at a different stage. Today is just more looking at salaries, wages, commissions, what they are, and pros and cons of them. So on that last point, pros, positives. What is a benefit of earning a salary? Well, probably the biggest one is that you are given sick pay or holiday pay. Basically, what it means is that if you are not working, you are still being paid. Okay, that is one big benefit of a salary. Of course, you're probably given a certain amount of days for sick days and holidays that you need to take. Anything above that might cause a different situation. But overall, yeah, you are given sick days and holiday days. I guess one of the other things is consistency of pay. That's probably another big factor, a big important point of a salary. You know that it's coming in. Okay, I guess sometimes when you're earning different types like wages, where you'll find out that's based on an hourly amount, you might not get that many hours given to you that week. At least a salary, it's a set amount. You know exactly what's coming in. So, if you're paying off mortgage and that type of thing, a salary is great because you know exactly how much you're getting. So if salaries are so good, then is there anything that is bad about a salary? Cons, negatives. Certainly there are. The biggest one, which is one that a lot of people get unhappy about, for the most part of a salary, there is no overtime. You might have a normal working hours of, let's say, 9 to 5 p.m., so 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., yet you might end up working, let's say, 8 a.m. to, let's say, 10 p.m. Got a busy day on. You still get paid the same amount. Okay, it doesn't matter how many hours you work, how much extra time or overtime that you put in. You might come in on holidays or whatever, or public holidays. You are still getting paid the exact same amount. So that, of course, is a big con or big negative of a salary. So with all these types of payments, there will be pros and cons. All right, so let's move on now to what a wage is. So a wage is based on an hourly rate. All right, so you might be getting paid $10 per hour, and you're going to be working 6 hours. So of course, it means you're going to be being paid $60 for that amount of time. So what you generally have is this thing what we call normal pay. So in this case, normal pay is $10 per hour, but you also have another type of pay called overtime, which I was sort of speaking about with the salary. A salary does not get. So what is overtime? Well, overtime is any hours that is being worked outside of your normal hours. So, for example, you might be supposed to work, let's say, 40 hours per week, but you end up working 50 hours per week. So you'll be paid more per hour for those extra 10 hours. Or often, if you come in on Sundays or weekdays, so weekends, particularly Sundays, public holidays, those sorts of things, I'll put public H days, those sorts of things you often get overtime. Now, what is overtime? Often we allude to time and a half, all right, which is going to be a multiplier of 1.5, which means your whole pay plus an extra half of it. So in this case, we'd be getting paid $15 per hour of overtime. You could have double time, which is a very common thing for public holidays, which in that case, if I got double time, we'd be getting $20 per hour, which is significantly, well, it's double what you're getting normally. But you can never get things like triple time and quadruple time. So certainly, there is a big benefit of having that wage. So that moves into a pro, which is the number one pro, which is my overtime. That is your biggest benefit of earning a wage. I guess you could probably say sometimes flexibility too, but certainly, overtime is number one. If I'm looking for a con, probably the con there's going to be that if you don't work, you don't get paid. Pretty much. Okay, so you're probably not going to get paid for being sick for most parts. Holidays, those types of things. It might be you might be a construction worker and it pours with rain and you can't work that day because obviously it's raining. Problem is you don't work, you don't get paid. As opposed from a salary, if that was the case, then obviously you would get paid. Look, these types of payments, this is a general rule for like what a wage is, my salary is. Of course, for every occupation, you often can barter with your boss, or your employer, in perhaps different circumstances. So some people who do get paid wages still might be able to get sick days or holidays pay and that sort of stuff. But this is just a general rule. So more so for a con, no work, no pay. That's probably a better way to put it. So of course, you could earn a lot of money for overtime, but the problem is, if you don't work, you don't get paid, and that can be a whole range of things. I said things like, for construction workers, if it's raining, you might not get any shifts available for you. The business might be slow, so the boss has to say, no, can you go home? And unfortunately, you go home, you're not going to get paid. So obviously, that's some big negatives or cons for a wage. Last of all, we've got a commission, which is, looks a bit weird there. It is based on a percentage of what you sell. Okay, so it's based on a percentage of what you sell. So this is largely going to look at people like salesmen. All right, or salespeople, should I say, because it can be man or woman. And I have put a little thing here called a retainer, which a retainer is an addition, not always, you don't always get it, but an additional flat payment. Okay, so let's look at an example, because often looking at an example for this type of question is probably easier. So let's say, for example, I'm a salesman. I might be told I get 10% of all sales plus I get $100 per week. All right, that's pretty much my contract. So look, if I don't sell anything, I'm still going to get $100. So at least that's going to be a good thing. Some people who earn commission might not get a retainer, which means obviously if they don't sell anything, then hey, they're not going to get any money, which will lead us into our pros and cons shortly. Okay, let's say I sell, let's say $50,000 worth of vacuums. I don't know why I chose vacuums, but I'm going to choose vacuums. So how much money would I get in that week? Okay, well, I'm going to get 10%, 0.1, times the $50,000 worth of vacuums, because I sold quite a few. Now remember, 10% is 0.1. You could put 10 over 100, but I would suggest when you're dealing with financial maths, percentages, it's much better to write them as decimals. Later on, you'll have to start dealing with dividing those by 12 if it's a yearly amount to get to a monthly amount, or lots of different things where you have to put this amount as a fraction. And obviously, if I put that as a fraction over 12, it's going to look quite messy. But that's down the track. 0.1, if you can't do decimals, then just stay with your fraction of 10 over 100. Either way, I'm going to calculate 0.1 times 50,000, or 10% of $50,000. I'm then going to add on that flat payment of $100. That was my retainer. So what is 10% of $50,000? Well, hopefully you recognize that to be 5,000. Probably don't need a calculator for that. So if I'm going to add on $100 to 5,000, we're going to make $5,100 that week, which was a pretty good earning. Okay, so again, a commission is based on a percentage of what you sell plus the possibility sometimes of getting a retainer. So for a commission, what is a pro? Well, I think the more you sell, the more you earn. And I'd probably write that is an incentive. So it has a really big incentive. The more product you sell, the more money is going to be in your pocket. It's a huge thing. Some companies will have caps, will have a commission cap, so you can't earn over a certain amount. Some places even have what we would call a sliding commission, which they might say, any sales between, let's say, 1,000 to 5,000, you're going to get 5% of sales. Then if you sell something between 5,000 to 10,000, or the next $5,000 to $10,000, you might get 4%, and what they might start to change that a little bit. So that there are different types of commissions. So certainly, I'm only just sort of putting commission under the big umbrella of commission. It can be different types of commission being paid. So that's a huge thing, particularly if you sell lots of houses one month. If you're a real estate agent, you're going to get a huge amount of money for that. But of course, with any pro, there's got to be a con, and that's going to be the direct opposite. No sales, no money. Okay, so that's a big problem for salespeople, and that's why people might say all car salesmen, they'll just say anything that you want to hear so that you buy stuff off them. They'll do anything to make a sale. The problem is that's their livelihood. They need to sell in order to get that money, so it's very important for them. So of course they're going to tell you whatever you want to hear, because that's their money. But of course, don't forget about that word retainer, because certainly that can be quite important as well. I will add on to that royalties. I'm going to write that word in the bottom. I'm going to spell that correctly. Royalties. They're pretty much worked out on the same basis of what a commission is, but often that's to do with, if you've made something, like often you think about artists. So I'll just put song artists there, for example. So song artists or authors or writers, all that sorts of things who, you might make a CD and you're successful and you sell that CD. And the thing is, those CDs are going to be sold all around the world, for example. Okay, and what your commission would be is that, of course, you're not going to get the money for that whole CD because you're not the person selling it. You've probably given it to an outlet to sell on to the public. And what will happen, you might get 1% of every single CD that was sold, or 2% of all money made from your book sales. That will go to you. So you get commission, basically. But we use the word a royalty, and royalties will occur because that's something that you have created that's going to be around forever. For however long, those things are being sold, you get money for it. That's why you might hear things like might be songwriters who are nearly dead, but they're still earning commission or royalties off what they made when they were like 15 or 20, if they were Justin Bieber. Anyway, I never thought I'd actually say his name on this, but there you go. Anything can happen. So what we've looked at our salaries, we've looked at our wages, and we've looked at our commission. Now, I've looked in some of those very brief examples of each of those. I'm not going to go through too much more of that, except for one last thing. Now, I've done an example for wages. I've did an example for commission. Wages, there are some hard questions coming up, but I'll put that later on, and most of those hard questions are on overtime. So I'll do a separate lesson on overtime. But I just want to make something about a salary. Often you get a question such as this, where they might say, we get paid $100 a week. Find out the annual payment, your annual salary, for example. Okay, which is pretty easy, right? 100 times 52, or 52.18, depending on what you have. That's a relatively easy question. Okay, yeah, we can do that. But we might have that slightly changed. They might say, I get $100 per week. Find out the monthly payment. Now, I guess this is not necessarily a salary question. This could still be a wage question, I guess. It's just, you're given an amount that you're being paid per week, and you're asked to put a monthly amount. The reason I bring this up is because a lot of people will just go, yeah, no worries, that's going to be 100 times 4 because there are 4 weeks in a month, and that equals $400. The issue is, that is an absolute rookie mistake. Think about how many days there are in a week. There are 7 days in a week. Therefore, in 4 weeks, there are, 4 sevens are 28 days. If you employed this method, you're saying that every single month has 28 days in it. Well, unfortunately, there is only 1 month a year that has that, and it is only every 4 years. All right, so that doesn't really work out, or whatever it is going to be. Or should I say the other way around? It's every 3 years, and then the 4th year is the leap year, which is the 29th. So that, that's not every single month. All right, that doesn't happen. It's only in February. So what does that mean? How can we change this to a monthly amount? Well, we know that there are 52 weeks in a year, so we can turn that to $5,200 as an annual payment. But we also know that there are 12 months in a year, so we can do 52,000 divided by 12, which is about 423.33, I think. 423.33. I think that might be a little bit incorrect, but you can double check that. Just be careful with that type of calculation. But look, yeah, that's pretty much salaries, wages, commissions. The biggest thing I want you to get out of it is a pro and a con for each, and to know the difference between each of them. Certainly, you get some harder questions with the commissions and with the wages, which I'll be going through at a later date. Sorry this was a little bit long because it wasn't that much information, but hopefully this makes complete and utter sense. And if not, then probably go to YouTube and find someone else who did a better video. Have a great day.